All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. We're into the flight path. So I feel like this is a little bit of my coming out party. You know, I just had back surgery 10 days ago, and I wasn't so sure that I was going to be completely ready for this, but I was very excited, and perhaps was so enthusiastic that my recovery would be quick that I booked the date. Yeah, no problem. I'm going to have my surgery, follow it up a week and a half later with this event, and walk around and say hello to everybody. And then this morning I said, I'm coming down 5 minutes before this starts. I'm not going to mingle for an hour. But I'm really glad that everybody's here and thrilled by the turnout. I think we generally assume that we're going to maybe have 50% attrition from the RSVPs to who actually shows up, because somewhere in between people find something more interesting or more exciting to do. But we had around 275 RSVPs, and I think we have maybe 200 people here, which is wonderful. And I'd like to say that that's probably a real compliment to the crew that we have here today, because we've got some of the most talented leaders in Southern California, clearly Orange County, knowing that Orange County is the epicenter of the universe. And that the people here do amazing work. And I like to think that there's a real consistent theme between the work that you all do as nonprofit leaders and the work that we do here at Genesis Bank. So I'm going to take a step back for a moment. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Stephen Gordon. I'm founding chairman, CEO of Genesis Bank. And you may remember the previous banks, Opus Bank, and others that we had launched and built. And the word, I never thought I'd have to actually do this, but the word bank today all of a sudden elicits some weird kind of experiential feeling from within one's soul, one's gut. And I never thought I'd have to explain it this way. I'm thrilled that we're not a publicly traded bank, right? The previous banks that we built, we had taken public through an IPO somewhere along the way. And we thought that was a really good idea at the point that we did it. Thank God we're not a publicly traded institution today. It used to be that if a bank had been around for a long time, that was a great thing. It used to be that if a bank was really large, that was a great thing. So today, we're a relatively new bank. We're not publicly traded, and we haven't had a chance to make any mistakes yet. Right? We've been around for a year and a half. We were launched with a purpose, and that was to be impactful in our communities, to be a community-based institution, and to lead differently than the rest of the banking system leads. I like to think that we lead with ideas, with brain power, with solutions, with mentorship, with technical assistance, and with the idea that what we do must have an impact in the communities that we serve. And now that I'm 59 plus one, it became clear that I can actually do economic good and social good both at the same time, and what better platform to do it with than a bank. And towards that end, out of 4,900 banks, minus I guess 3 in the last 2 weeks, we're one of 4,900 that are actually designated as a diverse, multiracial, minority depository institution, which means that we're very mission-driven with a purpose of having an impact, first and foremost, in the communities that we serve. And the reason why this today excites me so much is you lead, these great executive leaders of nonprofits lead with the soulful, passionate goal of making a real difference in the community that they serve and really having an impact. And that's very consistent with what we do. So I was looking forward to having this learning session, this experiential session today. And when I think about the last panel that I moderated here, and we're fortunate that we had this beautiful weather today that we planned, and I think we have rain tomorrow. But I kind of viewed it as if we invited in the community and we said, we want to have a session to teach you about nonprofits, or we as a bank want to have a session and we invite in 1,000 people and we want to have a session to teach everybody about, I don't know, financial literacy education in our low to moderate income minority communities, maybe we'd have 2 people show up. I mean, that sounds really exciting, right? But when we get to hear people's stories and how they became who they are and why they do what they do, people want to show up for that. And they stick around and they really hear that, and subliminally, they're getting an amazing education. So I had a whole bunch of stuff written. I think somewhere in there I said some of it, but I want to kind of dive in today and have you all experience the passion, the emotion, the reason why these people do what they do, and whatever anyone takes away from it, wonderful. And I hope it's interesting. I hope it's interactive. I like to think that at the end we'll open it up for Q&A, but if somebody has a question that they just can't wait and they're dying to ask that question now, please raise your hand and we'll just jump in and we'll go wherever we go. Just make it a good question. All right. So I'd like to mention and thank a few individuals and organizations. First, we're delighted to share that the Genesis for Good Foundation, a 501c3 public charity created by Genesis Bank for the purpose of giving back to the community, partnered with the Mattel Children's Foundation, who donated a huge amount of toys for our panelist organizations today. So thank you so much to Mattel and all of you who brought toys, key parenting supplies to the event today, and your generosity and donations are much appreciated. I'd also like to thank Core One Staffing and the national law firm of Holland & Knight for sponsoring today's event, and we're grateful for your support. We also have some special guests in the audience today that I'd like to acknowledge. Janet Brown and Magnolia Moreno, field representatives for U.S. Congressman Lou Correa in the 46th District. Charles Kim, District Representative for California State Senator Dave Min. Ahmad Zahra, Fullerton City Councilman. Emil Aaron, where are you, Emil? Emil? Head of DEI for the city of Irvine. The work that Emil does in the city of Irvine is unbelievable work. And he raised his hand and said, I want to, not only did I learn from him when he raised his hand and said, I want to head up DEI for the city of Irvine, but then when he took it from being an ad hoc committee to being a formal committee of the city, I thought that was amazing. And then we adopted the same thing at our board, where our DEI committee is actually a formal committee of the board, not an ad hoc committee, so there's a strong commitment. And Julian Castaneda, one of our awesome summer interns from 2022, and a founder of his own nonprofit, Bags of Love Foundation. Bags of Love Foundation was founded by Julian at just 18 years old. He's a 2-time cancer survivor who got a second chance at life, and with his second chance, he knew he wanted to make a difference in the community. Julian, I hope you're here. You said you were going to be here. Where are you, Julian? All right, so you actually first-handedly inspired everybody at Genesis to be impactful and support your cause, and I thank you for that. I mean, it was very moving, and your leadership was tremendous at such a young age. We also have Access Telecom here today. For those of you who don't know Access, Genesis Bank partnered with Access Telecom to deliver free internet and low-cost connective devices through the U.S. government's Affordable Connectivity Program that was formed during COVID. Access is proud to be our distribution partner in helping break down the digital divide across the nation and here in our diverse majority minority communities. And feel free to stop by Access Telecom table. You have a table here? Where? Okay. Hey there. All right. And learn more about the Affordable Connectivity Program. So now on to our panel. Deb Levy, Executive Director of Alzheimer's Association of Orange County Chapter. Deb is an award, and I feel bad for each one of you. You better have a large fan crowd here behind you. All right, Deb is an award-winning journalist and seasoned nonprofit executive in her capacity as the Executive Director of Alzheimer's Association, Orange County Chapter. Deb oversees the association's free local support groups, education programs, advocacy, and research initiatives in Orange County. Prior to joining Alzheimer's Association Orange County Chapter, Deb served in executive positions for some of the most well-respected nonprofits serving Orange County, including Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, United Cerebral Palsy of Orange County, and the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Southern California. Thank you, Deb, for being here. So I also want to say that when I met Deb, I had met her years ago, but when I met you here in our office, I hadn't even thought about putting together this panel. And when we met, I really absorbed your energy and your passion for what you do. I immediately looked at Deb and said, would you be on a panel if I moderate a panel where we discuss the work that you do and the nonprofits here in Orange County that are very impactful? She said yes, and that was the start of this whole thing. And fortunately, I didn't have to check with anybody else, and we went and did it. All right. So I'd also now like to welcome Chris Simonson. Chris, we go a long ways back, a lot of years back. And I know she's going to kill me, but my wife is here somewhere. Madeline Gordon has a long history with Orangewood. Madeline, are you here somewhere? She's not going to acknowledge she is. Right, she's probably under the chair now. All right, but after serving in various financial roles, including Chief Financial Officer at the Automobile Club of Southern California, Chris made a significant life decision to become part of Orange County's nonprofit industry by joining the Orangewood Foundation team in 2007 as its Chief Financial Officer. The Orangewood Foundation is one of the leading providers of services to foster youth here in Orange County. They help almost 2,000 foster youth per year prepare for independent adulthood by providing support in 4 critical areas: health and wellness, housing, life skills and employment, and education. Chris played a critical role in leading various innovative community projects, including the creation and construction of Orangewood's public charter school, the Samuel L. Academy, in 2013. And we've had interns from the Samuel L. Academy going back, I think, a decade easily. And it's been an amazing experience for everybody at the previous bank at Opus and now here at Genesis. And I remember when we first started an internship program at Opus, and we started even prior to that at Commercial Capital. I remember people saying, what's with this internship program? Why do we have to do this? We got a bank to run. And then at the end of the summer, everyone looked at me and goes, what do you mean they're leaving? We need them. Right? So, and Orangewood has been a big part of that, and Samuel L. Academy. Chris's business acumen, vision, and unwavering commitment to the mission earned him the promotion to CEO, where he served as Orangewood's visionary leader since 2014. Chris credits his success to being a servant leader to the staff and foster youth, and ensuring that all decisions at Orangewood Foundation start with a focus on doing what is best for its foster youth and young adults. Thank you, Chris. Please welcome Autumn Stryer. Autumn is co-founder and chief executive officer of Miracles for Kids. For the last 18 plus years, Autumn has dedicated herself to building Orange County-based Miracles for Kids. Serving as its co-founder, CEO, and board president, she is the chief architect of all programs and services offered by the organization and has been its lead fundraiser for nearly 2 decades. Together with the support of the community, Miracles for Kids has raised over $43 million in service of over 2,100 low-income families with children facing over 130 plus critical illnesses and conditions throughout Southern California and beyond. Before joining Miracles for Kids, I'm a huge fan of this, worked as an investment banker at Morgan Stanley in New York City, huge fan of that, as a policy analyst for Mayor Giuliani's administration, and lobbied for the rights of individuals and disabilities as the statewide public policy manager for the New Jersey National Multiple Sclerosis Society. And when I say very cool to have a fellow former investment banker and dislocated New Yorker living here in California. And last but not least, please help me in welcoming Jack Twan. Jack is co-chief executive officer of Illumination Foundation. As a refugee whose family relied on the kindness of strangers, Jack Twan understands firsthand the power of collaborative community that cares and actively works to lift others up. His experience drives his belief in creating social change through action. An inaugural member of the Illumination Foundation Board of Directors, Jack became the organization's co-chief executive officer in July 22. The Illumination Foundation provides targeted interdisciplinary services for the most vulnerable homeless adults and children to disrupt the cycle of homelessness. Now, I think there are a lot of people out there that talk about homelessness and kind of dance around how to address it, and a lot of people have ideas, but what really moved me is the actions that Illumination Foundations, not just words, but real actions that they're taking in order to have an impact to make a difference. Jack is responsible for the entire operations of the organization, including shelters, housing, and all infrastructure needs. Prior to his current role, Jack had an 18-year career in corporate social responsibility at Wells Fargo as the vice president and manager of community relations. He oversaw more than $10 million of the company's charitable giving program in the Southern California region. Thank you all for being a part of this today. So I'm going to lead into this kind of differently because I've chaired the board of a nonprofit, and every time I go into retirement, I decide to take on something that's going to screw up my life a little bit. And in this today, a lot of nonprofits lead with their hand out and wanting to just raise funds. And it's really about the work that you do and telling that story and why you do what you do that strikes a chord with people, that has people passionately want to be a part of what you're doing. So in no particular order, and everyone chime in, who are you? How did you become you? Why do you do what you do in the nonprofit space? And how have your prior experiences shaped your approach to leadership and working in this field?
You want to go?
Sure. I think Stephen had read it in my bio. I was when I was 8, my parents woke me up in the middle of the night and took us by cover of night onto a boat. Ended up in a refugee camp in Hong Kong, and I lived in the refugee camp for a year. And if you ever see pictures of those camps, it's a congregant shelter essentially, right? But while we were there, my parents applied for asylum, and in South Carolina, in a town of about 3,000 people, there was this little church that came together and said, "Hey, we want to help a family, and we want to sponsor this family to come to the U.S." And it's kind of weird hearing myself, but when we came, they provide housing, they provide clothes. This community of 60-something people really surrounded us, took me to school, took me to art class, spent time helping me catch up on English. I got math down, so that was good. Really they just surrounded us and took care of us and helped my parents get jobs and acclimate. And that's how I grew up. I saw this community, people reaching out to somebody that looked different from them, and to serve. And that was imprinted in me. And even though, as an Asian kid, I'm supposed to be a doctor or an engineer, ultimately when time came down, I pursued a career that was to serve the community because that was imprinted in my heart at a young age. Homelessness was something that I wasn't looking to get into. I took my wife to the first a fundraising event with the Illumination Foundation at the racetrack. At the time he wasn't a congressman, but Lou Correa was there. So I was working for the other bank, and I wanted to connect with him, but I also wanted to go to the racetrack. But my wife was connected to the cause because she also grew up and had actually been homeless because her and her mom got displaced. So she said, "Hey, this is a board you should join," and that's how we connected to this cause, and haven't turned back ever since. And my last maybe 13, 14 years of my life have been dedicated to this mission and this organization.
So who am I? I think of those like those word graphs where you use all these different words and you put a picture together, and I'm definitely a culmination of a lot of different things. I'm a proud soccer mom. I have a 13-year-old daughter. My husband was a fighter pilot in the U.S. Navy and fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm a proud daughter, sister. I'm a loyal friend. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a Southern California native. I went to both UCLA and UC Santa Barbara. Go Gauchos and Bruins. And as Stephen mentioned, I'm an award-winning television journalist. I worked for CBS in different parts of the country for 14 years. Won lots of awards, was really important to give back to the community. I'm a philanthropist and a community investor. I'm very proud to say that I've raised over $100 million through my life for charities that I care about in different parts of the country. I'm tenacious, I'm very hardworking, and I had the opportunity to switch over to nonprofit about 20 years ago. So I ran the Ronald McDonald House Charity in Southern California. Then I became president, CEO of another children's charity that's now called Unlimited Possibilities. I was diagnosed with cancer and I retired. And then the president of Angels Baseball reached out to me and they needed an executive director for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and that's the type of cancer that I had. So I came out of retirement to work for LLS. Then I went back into retirement again and got a call from the Alzheimer's Association. My team is here. The more that I learn about what the Alzheimer's Association does and who we're helping, I'm inspired every day. And I'm extremely passionate about teaching, young people about brain health, healthy living. I think we all need to elevate brain health in our awareness.
Well, hi everyone, it's nice to be here. It's nice to see some faces that are familiar in the audience. Stephen, thanks so much for having us. Who am I? Really, I would say that I am a product of circumstance. I grew up in the Mojave Desert. Anyone? Yeah? So a small town called Apple Valley. I'm the only child of a single parent, my mom, who I love to death, but in my early years was battling depression and addiction. She was very young herself, trying to make it in a very difficult world, and she was unable to for a long period of time, which left me on my own to figure things out at a young age. I got my first job when I was 10, and I've been working ever since. I'm proud to say that I still don't think I work a day in my life because I love so much what I've done and what I do. But it changes you. It creates the kind of person that maybe you didn't know you were going to become because you had to put your own food on the table. You had to figure out how to find clothing. You had to figure out how to get to school. Bouncing around houses and taking generosity from strangers, extended family and friends is really the fabric of who I am. I think because of the generosity of those that I didn't meet throughout my young years, formed who I am today. I'm so incredibly grateful for the tennis coach who stuck a pair of shoes in my locker without telling me so that I didn't have a hole when I went out to play tennis. I was excited to be on the tennis team, but shoes are expensive. I went to a school that was the third worst in the state of California, Apple Valley High School. There was no career center, there was nothing there, but it was because of the generosity of teachers who helped me. I was one of 6 kids who got out of Apple Valley and managed to get into UCSB, go Gauchos. And between work study and a lot of grants and 3 jobs day and night, managed to put myself through school. I moved on to NYU where I got my graduate degree in service, so I have an MPA, which is just like an MBA, but for the public sector, which I enjoyed thoroughly. And I spent some time at Giuliani's office, so not everybody hold that against me. I think maybe turned left a little bit. As far as who the fabric of who I am is, I think it's a little bit of everything along the way. It's gratitude mostly for people who stepped up for me when I needed it, and in return, I've dedicated my life to service so that I can do that for someone else. Miracles for Kids supports families who are experiencing tragedy because of a health circumstance, their child battling a life-threatening illness. I am a mom of 3. I have a 20, 18, and 15-year-old. And I wouldn't know that, but along the way, 2 of my 3 kids were diagnosed with chronic pain conditions. And then all of a sudden, I became the mom at the hospital every day and every night, experiencing the same that the families at Miracles for Kids were experiencing. It brought me even closer to the demographic that we serve. So between my childhood and who I am as an adult, a mom, a wife of 24 years, I now have a deep personal connection on multiple levels, and it really ties me even closer to our mission and what we do.
So that's a tough act to follow. I actually had a very healthy, straightforward upbringing in Southern California my whole life. 3 siblings, growing up in LA County in the South Bay near the beach. Pretty traditional, everything moving along nicely. I graduated college and went to work for a big accounting firm and started progressing along in my finance career to the point where I ended up at the Automobile Club, as Stephen mentioned. And 10 years later, at the age of 40, I was the senior VP and CFO of a $3 billion company. I thought I had made it, just work another 15 years, making this enormous salary I was making, and I was set. But my 4 kids were between the ages of 2 and 12, and I didn't want to work 70 hours a week and never see them grow up. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and I got a letter on my desk one day that a nonprofit needed a CFO, and I said, this must be a sign I should look into this. So I didn't know anything about foster youth. I'd never heard of Orangewood Foundation, but went there and loved the mission, loved the people I met with. I had always been a soccer coach, Indian Guides leader, taught classes at my church. I loved youth, and I knew that was the place for me. So I made a huge shift to make a lot less money, but have a lot more time with my family, and to have a purpose of serving the community and probably the most vulnerable population of teens and young adults that you would find in any community. And I wouldn't trade one day for that decision. It's been a great 15 and a half years working at Orangewood Foundation and seeing the impact that our team has on so many young people in walking alongside them, helping them accomplish their goals, getting on their feet, being successful, graduating from colleges, getting master's degrees, or just getting their driver's license when they don't have one. I take my servant leadership extremely seriously. I've got 2 jobs: serve the youth and serve our team. And if I'm doing something during the day that doesn't fall under one of those 2 things, maybe I shouldn't be doing it. So I appreciate the time I've been able to serve the youth, our community, and our team. We've got a great group of supporters and a great community around us, and you don't have to make a huge career shift to get involved and be a part of a nonprofit community. We can't do it all by ourselves. We need all of you and everyone in this community to help solve these problems that really should not exist in our community. So appreciate being here. Thank you.
So not one of my questions written for today at all, but just yesterday I saw a headline that nonprofits are struggling to find talent, employee talent. Is that the case? Are you experiencing, are you seeing it? Are people wanting to be in the nonprofit space? Or are they going to for-profit? Is it an issue?
Yes.
What is driving that? Is it people, they don't think of a nonprofit career? They weren't raised to think about it? They weren't raised to think of giving back? Or what? I'm just guessing.
I think there's a lot of need in the nonprofit community for skills and people that have a passion for serving others. There's people out there, but one of the things that we combat all the time is we need to pay our people a livable wage. And when I've got a team of program staff that are working every day to help prevent kids from committing suicide, getting them off the streets, getting them out of their cars, helping them through mental breakdowns, for us not to be able to pay them, a wage that they can live on in Orange County is a big challenge. And, and we do a better job than some as far as being able to stretch our budget and pay our people. So, a lot of people that would be amazing working for a nonprofit don't go down that path because of financial reasons, and the one that do go down that path, they struggle. Yeah.
More thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think burnout for the staff it's a real situation. I mean, our staff in the shelters, you get yelled at, you get people with mental health issues getting on your case all day, you can make more money working in fast food and not get yelled at, right? And not have to put up with the things that they have to put up with. So it's a very difficult thing. So trying to retain those people that have a heart, but they need to survive as well in a very expensive county to live in. That's hard.
I'm also going to say that the amount of things that staff are asked to do, it's not the same in a for-profit kind of environment. So, our team are wearing multiple hats, and they're asked to work long hours. We do things at night. You have a donor that wants to meet with you. You want to meet with that person when it's convenient for them. Weekends, lots of long weekends. It's physical. It's a physical job also. I mean, if we just talk about our development staff, our fundraising staff, they're having to dress nice and schlug, cases of water and set up for events and break them down. And it's just a hard job.
But imagine you're also balancing, a for-profit entity is trying to generate profitability at the end of the day and returns. And then you have a nonprofit who still has to deal with the 990 and making sure that the expenses aren't eating up all the donor dollars. And yet you still got to be able to be a competitive employer of talent. And so, like you said, you end up with people doing multiple jobs spread thin.
I think one of the things that, I think I'm the only one who's up here on the panel that's part of a national, organization as a voluntary health organization. And I will commend the Alzheimer's Association is really thinking about taking care of its employees. We have Health Matters days where employees are encouraged to, make their medical appointments on that day, and we won't schedule, it happens to be this coming Monday. You can't schedule meetings on those days. We really try to give as much balance as we can to our employees, knowing that they're not highly compensated.
The one thing that I'll add also is, because my 3 teenagers have experienced it, I don't think that the majority of people who are going through high school are exposed as much as they should be to the nonprofit industry. We really work with a lot of the career counselors where we have school clubs to educate them, because I believe that education will also bring awareness to the idea that somebody who loves marketing, loves social media, wants to be in sales, which we call development, you can pursue that career. Yes, there's a challenge living in Orange County, and yes, a living wage is a conversation that we need to actively have. But I also believe that starting earlier and telling people this is an option, you can have purpose and establish a life for yourself in a way that works for you. I think that's something that we need to continue the conversation at with our young adults too.
Yep. If I can, since you brought up the difference between nonprofit and for-profit, I think nonprofits are set up a little bit different in the sense that it doesn't make it easy for us to succeed, right? Because you look at Charity Navigator and you look at GuideStar, and they say, hey, your overhead's got to be like 10%, and you can't go over that, or you're a crappy nonprofit. You look at a for-profit business like that. I mean, like, how do you invest in infrastructure? How do you invest in growth opportunities and career paths for your team if you're limited by what your expenses are? And, so what qualifies as a good nonprofit is completely upside down.
I think we all have to get better at telling our story. So it's not just simply what's on the 990 or what's in Charity Navigator. There's a story behind that spreadsheet of entries doesn't really tell. So you're heading in a direction that I experienced when I chaired the board of an organization that had run itself into the ground, part of a national organization with Orange County presence. I went on the board to clean it up. And on day one, I tried to explain to the existing board that had been operating somewhat in a vacuum and not listening to the community that it serves, that we run a business. It's the business of doing good in our community, but it's a business. And I think some nonprofits lose sight of the fact, or some boards lose sight of the fact of nonprofits, that they're running a business, and that the business, in order to be able to do good, needs to be able to run well in order to sustain the doing good over test of time through various economic cycles like what we're heading into, et cetera. And that leads me to what some of the biggest challenges are you face in running your business and how you overcome them.
Well, I think you brought up one, which is just staff retention and being able to bring in talented people that can serve the mission and do that in a cost-effective way. I think for Orangewood Foundation, we were overly reliant on donor dollars when I first came there, and we needed to diversify where our revenue was coming from, because when the recession hit back in 2008, it really impacted us severely, and we had to make some drastic decisions. So we've been working over the last 8 to 9 years to bring in revenue from different places that are going to be sustainable long-term and not just one-time shots in the arm. And we've shifted our percentage of donor dollars from 85% to closer to 60%, with the rest coming from state, county, and federal contracts to fill the gaps in services in Orange County that exist that we would be really good at filling. And so we look for opportunities that align with our mission, that will bring resources into Orange County and serve our youth by bringing them more services. And by doing that, we've slowly over time built this model that is more recession-proof and sustainable long-term.
I'll jump in. One of the things that we face at Miracles for Kids is also related to revenue diversification, but in our case, it's that we have nearly 50% of our revenue coming from signature events that we host throughout the year. I think in Orange County and certainly in Southern California, especially because of the weather, a lot of nonprofits focus on having fundraisers, whether they're walkathons or large galas. These events allow us to leverage relationships with corporate partners and sponsors and bring new relationships in. But of course, we all experienced the pandemic when everything shut down. Those of us who were dealing with event revenue being a primary resource, it really brings to light, oh my goodness, you need to really diversify revenue. Now, we rebuilt and adjusted, and we're an essential service, so we were able to pivot, which is a word that I don't like because we've all overused it so much. But that, along with, in our case, also burnout related to our caseworkers who deal in childhood death, unfortunately, on a regular basis. The population that we deal with, their frontline work there makes it difficult for them to stay with us really over 3 to 5 years. So you've got training, and then they're leaving, of course, because there's only so long a human can actually do that kind of work, especially when it's got so much emotion to it. So between the revenue diversification that's so important, and then bringing in different sources. For us, it's writing grants, it's really working on corporate partnerships and growing a non-event revenue base, and then also working on legacy giving, which is an important element for any nonprofit as well.
I'm going to say reach. For us, Alzheimer's disease, there's 700,000 Californians living with Alzheimer's disease right now, and that's not even talking about the caregivers and their families who are helping care for them. It is the 4th leading cause of death in the state of California, and in Orange County, there's 9 of us total in terms of our staff. That's it. So we need to engage our volunteers and community leaders and community partners to be able to share resources, because our resources are free. We want to make sure that we're reaching underrepresented, underserved communities in ways that are meaningful to them. So we need individuals who can speak a variety of languages, who can present our materials in those communities. We need to be able to partner with businesses like Genesis to be able to educate their employees about the resources that are available, or ways to understand what Alzheimer's disease is and ways to recognize it, and what to do if you see those warning signs in someone you love. But we really need volunteer support and community support in order to reach the sheer volume of people who need our resources here.
Yeah, the revenue diversification is also, one of the things that we looked at. Over the last 15 years, we've just take on projects because we needed a contract, right? But in the last few years, we've been able to grow our earned revenue. So as of right now, 50% of our income is earned revenue. And really only about 10%, and the rest of contracts, about 10% is philanthropy, which is still important. But for us, the biggest hurdle right now and problem we're dealing with is actually access to available housing. We're trying to disrupt and the cycle of homelessness, trying to get somebody, well, how do you end homeless? You put them in a home, but there's not enough homes that's affordable. And then there's efforts to put vouchers out in the hands of people, but you have vouchers, but you don't have enough people that are renting out the property, or there's just not enough housing. Orange County, a recent report said that we're short 2,300 units. You can't build that overnight. So what are some of the solutions so that's a big hurdle right now.
Are the vouchers working?
It is working, but I guess you would have to look at the landlords and say, what do they want to take vouchers? Yeah, some will, some won't. That's why United Way also has the United End Homelessness. I mean, they created this incentive program, right? So they incentivize landlords to take on these vouchers, but you can only do so much when there's so many people that needs housing, but there's just not enough out there. And why would you want to do it if you can get market rate rent? You're gonna make a lot more money.
Right, and if you create housing for homeless in an apartment building, do you get other residents wanting to move out? I have no idea.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know about in that unit, but in the neighborhood, right? There's a lot of NIMBYism that happens.
So when you talk about diversifying your revenue base and outreach, what do you think the role of your board is? I mean, there's oversight, governance, their responsibility around that, but you also probably invited some of those members on the board for other reasons besides you think they're good for governance and oversight. So how do you leverage your board? How do you push your board? How does your board push you? Is there dead weight on your boards?
Yes.
There's
Just kidding.
No.
There's different types of board members, Stephen. Some that are extremely
God, I know that.
Some that are extremely active and very involved. Some that show up occasionally, and then there's some that send you a check and ask how things are going. But everybody on our board brings something to the table, and whether it's financial resources, but we expect all of our board members to build our circle of influence in the community by tapping into their networks or relationships that they have. That's the way that we can grow our impact, by getting more people in the community involved, know what we do, bring awareness to the struggles that teens and young adults have in our county, and then develop partnerships and relationships and collaborations to have a bigger impact. You know, Jack brought up United to End Homelessness, and that's a great program, and the vouchers that Jack talked about, there are now vouchers for former foster youth, and Orange County is the most successful county in the state of California in placing youth with those vouchers because of the collaboration that we have with United Way and the County of Orange. And so we rely on our board members to help us make those connections, but we've also got to do a lot of work ourselves. Yeah.
I think for us, building the board over the last 19 years or so, we've really tried to continue to bring in individuals from different industries, try to cross-pollinate, try to open doors and windows, try to make sure that not everybody is in real estate or whatever is a major area here, and continuing to recruit, not just from different areas, but specific for Miracles for Kids, because we serve Southern California. So we're looking at Rady Children's and trying to serve families out in Loma Linda, up in LA County. Not all of those who live in our area go to the hospital in their area. So you have a lot of individuals crossing over from different counties. So for us, it's important to build those relationships, and we rely on our board for that. Our board is fairly small, I think comparatively, I'm not totally sure, but there's 19 of us. And we have, we call them beef or chicken board members. So whenever I get together with them, I say, okay, are you guys beef or chicken, right? Or are you gonna do surf and paddle camps and get in the water with the kids and bring out the in-kind donations? Or are you so busy flying around the world you're gonna be a check writer, or what kind of board member do you want to be? And then we try to connect that passion to what we have to do, really just to retain them, and there's chasing and there's emails and there's phone calls when they don't show up, reminding them of the importance of their dedication to the board. But really, the board's role for me is to help us open those doors and windows, because as we're talking about, it's not just revenue diversification, it's donor disappearance, right? When the economy goes down and things are happening and you've got a resource you can no longer rely on, you have to be able to open a window when a door closes. So we rely on the board, quite specifically for that as well.
I echo what my colleagues had said. Opening doors is really important for us. I also think it's really important to find out what their individual passion is, and making sure that we're finding the right projects that meet those passions. So I'll give you an example, a story when I was with Ronald McDonald House Charities. One of our board members really wanted to interact with the families who were staying in one of our Ronald McDonald houses, and she wanted to engage her family in a project that was going to be meaningful, and she wanted to do something around the holidays. And so we came up with an idea where her family took families that were staying at the Ronald McDonald House during the holiday shopping at Target, and we created a partnership with Target. We would take the families on that day with her family and go shopping at Target, and each family was allowed to spend a certain amount of money for their loved ones. That was a project 20 years ago. I just had lunch with this former board member. She and her family are still doing it today. It was so meaningful to them that her kids now have kids, and they're taking her grandkids on this project as well. It's become a family project. One of the things that I love in my role is really listening to what people want to do and trying to connect them to that project.
Yeah, just sum it up. It's fundraising and friend raising, right? And but one thing I want to point out is really important to look at your board in terms of diversity, because we have a matrix we work with, and we try to identify what are the missing spots, all the way from skill sets, expertise, passion, to gender, to ethnic representation as well. And so we're very deliberate about approaching that because we want a diverse thought, and we also want representation. And so having lived experience and a voice for that is also critically important for us.
So that goes to being aware of who your, I hate using the business terms, but like who your client base is, who your constituents are, listening to your constituents. You have many different types of constituents. Some are the, those that you serve in, who need housing and need mental health services. Some are those who need the proper services to support the family of somebody who has Alzheimer's, etc. But you also have constituents such as donors. You have municipal leaders who are constituents that you want to be aware of what you're doing and the impact you're having and the need. How do you go about listening to those constituents, or do you? I mean, I thought it was really important that with the organization that I was chairing, that everyone was chomping at the bit wanting to go out and fundraise. They knew they had a problem, they wanted to go fundraise. And I said, stop. We need to first listen to our 40 community partners and our constituents and hear what they think our role, our purpose, our mission should be. Because if there's a disconnect there, we got a big problem, right? We're not going to be able to raise funds. We're not going to be able to sustain the mission. We're not going to be able to exist long term. Do you have listening sessions? Do you get out to your constituents? Do you listen, or is there, and I don't mean this exists, but because I'm sure none of you have arrogant boardrooms, but periodically those things happen within a vacuum, where a board says, this is what we should be doing, this is how we should be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the biggest constituent we listen to is our youth. They are experiencing the challenges firsthand, and they know what they need that we can't offer right now and where the gaps are. And at that point is when we start to identify constituents that could potentially help us close those gaps and develop new programs or services to meet that need. I think doing it from a top-down approach, you're off the mark more times than not. The youth voice is so important in what we do, and I think that's your best source of information of where to focus your resources and how to have a bigger impact.
Well, and I'll add to that, and I think we've probably all experienced this. I agree wholeheartedly. And for us, what our families needed in 2005 is not what they needed in 08. It's not what they needed in 13. It certainly wasn't what they needed in COVID. And now they're experiencing another shift in what their needs are. And so really listening to them, not just through our caseworkers, but we have a housing complex that allows us, to have direct and continual contact with our families, and our caseworkers we have 350 families that we serve on any given day, so that's, our caseworkers are calling them on a weekly basis. And really listening allows us to also pivot and change the programming. Right now we're working on the launch of a new program that's focused on financial literacy, jobs, and education, because we're really focused on what's next for the families. They have extraordinary fear of their child going into a remission, which is a blessing, but in the process they've lost everything. And what are they going to do? And there are no solutions there. And so, you have to build the bridges when they don't exist. So for us, we have to listen, but not just listen once, we have to listen consistently, just like the youth population. Everything in our world is shifting, and of course the demographics we all serve, it's continually shifting. And so it's an ongoing conversation, really. And then for Miracles, and I'm sure this is true for others, it's sharing that information with our stakeholders, whether they're the board members, the volunteers, or other constituent groups, to make sure they feel connected and that they can figure out how to help as well. I think that's another way that we really level out all of the groups and how everybody can work together.
There's so many ways I could go with this. One is that we survey families who are helped by us. So whether they call our 24/7 helpline, they will get a survey. If they attend one of our support groups, they can participate in a survey. And I've only been with the organization for 2 years now. To have this information, I think, is going to be really important for us to take back to our staff and our board and be able to analyze this information and see how we can be doing better in our community. So that's one thing. We just did a listening session. Katie from Genesis Bank was there, where we comprised a bunch of community leaders from Orange County and brought them together and put them at small groups and asked for their input on how we're doing and what ways we can provide different and better resources here. We're working with the County of Orange right now on the master plan for aging to see what gaps are here in the County of Orange and how we can fulfill those, fill those gaps. We are partnering with the County of Orange to apply for a Healthy Brain Initiative grant through the state of California to be able to provide some resources for caregivers in our community and various resources that currently are available in 6 counties in California but are not available right now in the County of Orange. So we're working with the county to bring a Healthy Brain Initiative to Orange County. And that's just a few things.
I'll share a story, slightly different angle here, and it's more about paying attention to what's happening with your constituents or clients, right? So several years ago, we had an individual that he was a veteran, he was homeless, he came through our program, and we helped him get his voucher, got him connected to his own home. 2 or 3 months later, he ended up back out on the street. So we were asking why. Turns out that we took him from his community that he had in the street and then isolated him in his own house. And so he was missing his community. He didn't have community, so he went back out on the street where he knew the people. And so learning that and paying attention to that helped us change the way we do housing, right? And we developed this micro community model where we put people in the same home and they're living in their own room, but they have shared space, but they create this community. And so now we're doing modular housing. We build those modular housing, taking into consideration these things. So paying attention to what's happening, as you're serving your clients, also critically important. So
is that like cohabitational living space?
Yeah, it's kind of like back in the college days.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, not speaking too out of turn, but the Gonzalez family, which is Northgate Markets, they've been the largest Hispanic-owned, Mexican-owned grocery chain in the United States, and it's all here in Southern California. And they also have been so successful. They have a real estate side to to what they do, and have close to $1 billion real estate portfolio they've built up of development properties. And they're planning on doing something in Santa Ana, right in downtown Santa Ana by the trolley. And it's 5 stories of apartments. And on ground floor, they've got retail and commercial. And the idea is that a certain percentage of what they're building or planning to build is cohabitational living. But the banks can't seem to get their arms around the idea of financing cohabitational living because there's not a lot of comp data to be able to support what level of rents that should be. So what ends up happening is the rents get cut back to as though it's non-cohabitational in order to look at peer comp data. And instead of being able to get the full amount of financing that they would normally get, it gets cut back significantly, which means equity's got to somehow come to the table to be able to support the need that truly does exist, but the banks can't figure out how to get their arms around it. But that's something right in line with what you're looking for, where you've got 4 separately locked rooms with living room, kitchen in between, right?
Just if I could follow up on Jack's point, we've got a lot of complex social issues like homelessness and mental health and other things that all of us are trying to address. Just providing a house or money isn't the answer, because a lot of people have never lived on their own. They don't know how to live in an apartment. They come up to a challenge, if they don't have someone to talk to about it, they're gonna fail. And like in Jack's case, maybe they leave their apartment. So that's really the ongoing challenge, is how do you provide the supportive services around the concrete answer of money or an apartment to make sure that person doesn't fail, and they've got someone to connect with throughout their journey until they get to a point where they feel comfortable being independent. And I know that piece of the puzzle was missing initially with the vouchers that we had for our youth. And when the county stepped up and provided some funding to provide case management for those young people getting their vouchers, that's when the program's taken off, and they're staying in their housing, they're having success, they're achieving their goals. But it's more than just, it starts with housing, but then you've got to give them the support behind it.
Are there other nonprofits that you all partner with, collaborate with, that provide the ancillary complementary services that each one of you needs, but on your own you can't afford to have everything under one roof?
Yes. Yes. So we're a member of the Family Solutions Collaborative, which is all the service provider that's focused on addressing homeless issues. I see a couple of members here as well. We partner with, we have a Girl Scout troop in some of our one of our properties where we're serving families. We got Team Kids represented. So they provide a lot of additional services that we may not have expertise or resources to do, and those partnerships are really critical, because just one organization may not be able to. It's about addressing the social determinants of health, right? And so all of us are generally healthy if everything's in place, but the people that we serve at least are losing some, or it could be 1, 2, 3, or all of the social determinants of health, whether it's access to healthcare, access to healthy food, access to housing. And so all of us have a role to play in reintroducing those social determinants of health back if you really want somebody to be stable. Because I think what we're addressing are all the symptoms of other problems. I mean, like, at least for homelessness, I can say, homelessness is not the disease, is a symptom of other diseases, as Chris pointed out.
We work very closely with the healthcare field here. So right now there are for sure not enough physicians and geriatricians and social services and mental health professionals and right now there are only 2 drugs that have been approved by the FDA to slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease, and they're not covered by Centers for Medicaid and Medicare. So we work very closely with the healthcare community in Orange County and also federally to make sure that resources are available to families.
Okay. Looking back at your histories, some newer, some much longer, what were some of the most ambitious, riskiest decisions you made, where there was programmatic related decisions, building out the Samuel E. Academy, whatever it was, that was a tough decision, but you guys decided to go do it, go for it, and knew you were taking a risk doing it?
Yeah, I mean, since you brought it up, we were just coming out of the recession, like I mentioned before, where we had frozen salaries for 3 years. We had cut staff. We had 0 reserves. We had maxed out our credit line. And then we went ahead and bought a 7-acre piece of property in Santa Ana for $8.5 million to start our school. And as the CFO at the time, it was a little bit of a nervous time for me, but that was one of the reasons why I joined the organization initially. Was this project was something the board wanted to do. We wanted to get more foster youth to graduate high school. Instead of a 60% graduation rate, we wanted it to be 100%, which is what it is at our school. But yeah, it was a risk, and we had never run a school before. We were going to have to raise over $70 million to build our school. But the systems that were in place were not serving our youth well, and we knew we could do a better job. And so the community, due to our long history and our track record of delivering results, they got behind us. It took us 10 years. We finally finished it last year. But while it was risky, it's going to provide benefits to our community for decades, not just to foster youth, but we've got a lot of community youth from the Santa Ana area attending our school, being the first to graduate college, first to get jobs, making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year as 23-year-olds, things their parents could never dream of. And so, I mean, that's really why we exist, is to have an impact, to push our community to do better, to do more, to not just settle on systems that are in place that are not working well and failing, but how can we innovate and think outside the box to make those outcomes improve to where they should be.
By the way, my daughter graduated from Samueli Academy, and it's a great school. And then she interned at Opus Bank, so she's set up really well.
Would she like to come volunteer? I'll jump in. We were talking about the board and just our relationship with board members. It was 2013, and I had a single mom who had a child with an IV pole who had been evicted from her house because her employer had kicked her out because she had too many sick days. She wandered into Miracles and she said, what am I gonna do? She and I went to a couple local shelters trying to find her a bed. And unfortunately, because she had a critically ill child, they weren't able to take her in, right? You think insurance, you think risk, you think all of that. So it wasn't maybe 30, 60 days later that the board got together and we decided, well, you know what? Some of us decided, and that of course comes to the part where the risk is and where the conversations were. But we decided to build Miracle Manor. We decided that we had a population that wasn't being served well in the community because there was no place for families with critically ill children to find stable housing. That was probably the time that our board had its one and only fight, but it was heated because we were a young organization. I mean, I only started it less than 20 years ago, and we were so focused on financial aid and stability in those areas. Some even argued that I was going outside my lane, when it came into housing, but there were no other solutions. It's not that we were trying to replicate something that already existed. We were trying to contribute something that didn't exist. The board finally came together, and it was Christmas Eve 2014. We convinced a bank to help us, and we were able to secure Miracle Manor. And thanks to over 100 companies and almost a year of TIs and tearing down and rebuilding, we were able to build it, and it's still a wonderful solution today to for 78 people, 12 families living long term, getting stability and support services. But it is, I think with anyone's board, it's the same thing, taking such an intense risk that has a financial tag to it and not knowing, like we've talked about, whether or not our donors are going to show up, right? You don't know when you take the leap 100% of the time. You have to go out and advocate, and you sort of hold your breath and hope that it works. But if you believe in it wholeheartedly and you've got the passion, which all of us have when we're working on our projects, I think we're able to get the support somewhere, and that's thanks to the community at large, for sure.
Can I dive into that one a little bit further?
Yeah.
Just because I experienced something similar to that with this organization, where years earlier some families came together. They were also board members, and they made a decision to acquire 2 homes and turn them into homes for autistic children, and from within the community. And that was a great moment, good decision. And it was kind of almost like incubating a project that was needed. And then somewhere along the way, the organization realized, or somewhat realized, that there was liability associated with operating the homes, that they didn't really have anyone internally in the organization to properly stay within the rule sets to operate the homes. And then the decision that I drove and kind of somewhat divided the community, and then everybody came together on it, was to get a proper operator in place to buy and operate the homes, but that we did the right thing to incubate it, create it, and create that entity that did not exist, that place for those who needed it. Have you debated that internally? Like, now that we own the homes and we're operating the homes, are we the best people to operate the homes?
You know, for us, because Miracle Manor is independent living, 12-unit environment, we did have to bring on staff that had expertise in that type of casework, who are able to work on a weekly basis, helping families stabilize. But I think that's part of the challenge, right? If you're going to take that on, you can either incubate it and then hand it off to experts, or you can make the decision to bring them in-house and train them. For us, the type of casework that we do, whether or not they live with us or just live in the community, it's the same type of work. It's really the type of active conversations focused on their child and their jobs and their needs, basic needs, and they don't change very much. So for us, over the period of time, really the one thing that we don't know how to do yet, but we know that we have to become greater experts in, and we referred to it, is really looking at what's next, right? So that's financial security, jobs, and education. Now, when it comes to those things, those stability factors that are going to ensure that when they leave Miracle Manor, they're contributing members of society at a time that's right in their lives, that's where we reach into the community and we find the experts to come in and partner with us, because that's not our area of expertise, and there are so many who have that.
Thank you. Jack?
Yeah, almost everything we do is a risk on the nonprofit side, as you think about it, because we're, to my point earlier, we're not set up to have the resources to invest. So, for example, if I wanted to build housing, I not only have to figure out how to get the money to build the housing, I have to figure out how to get the money to provide the ongoing services for the client. And each of those steps is a hurdle in itself, and nobody actually commits any kind of money ahead of time. They're like, oh, did they commit? And then the other side's like, oh, did they commit? Right? And so you have to get all those stacks together, and it's very complicated. And so it's a little bit risky, but the riskiest project we had was just a couple of years ago, similar to building a school, not quite that massive, but we built a facility in Fullerton where we provided integrated services, where there's a navigation center, recuperative care center, and a clinic. But as we were building that, there's some negotiation with the city and kind of things that weren't signed properly, and all these little things that happened, and then COVID happened. And so we ended up investing a lot more money just to get that done, and it could have broke the organization, but that our CFO started looking like me, and so he's getting out of it now. We're in a much healthier place, and if you ask him, he said, if we had to do it again, we'd do it again, just because it was the right thing to do. But it was definitely risky, and it could have taken the organization downhill.
I'm going to disagree with Jack on one thing. We're a business, and when you're starting up a new program or service, you've got to do your due diligence, and you got to lay the groundwork for your board so they know that you've got a plan to make this successful. And we've launched, 6 or 7 different programs over the last 5 or 6 years, whether it's housing or other things. And when we saw that need and we wanted to fill it, and we started putting our plan together, we actually went to relationships that we had in investors in Orangewood and said, this is something we want to do. Here's our plan to make it sustainable long term. Will you give us some seed capital to get it going until we have it up and running and we have some outcomes that we can then sell to foundations, or some government funding comes in around this area that can help sustain it, as Jack was saying, longer term. And so we've been pretty successful in getting what I'll call backstop funding up front. So when I go to the board and say, we want to launch this program, we've got a donor that's going to buy the house for us, and this is our plan to get operational funding over the next 3 years, they're more apt to say, hey, great idea, let's move forward. And I think that's something that all of us in the nonprofit industry, like I said, we're a business, and we should think about our donors as investors and getting capital calls from them. when you talk their language sometimes, a light bulb can go on and they can see where you're coming from. We had a donor that we had 3 new startup programs, and we needed some initial funding to get us going. And I referred back to their own experience as a startup tech company, and what did they do? They went out and got capital from investors, and so I was asking them to be that angel investor for our programs so that we could get going, and we were successful in making that ask, and it was instrumental in launching those programs for us.
Hey, Chris, I love the introduction.
No, but it's right. It's no different than launching a company, having a business plan, having an offering document, and having people invest in the plan and believe in the people that are going to execute the plan. I have other questions, but I think maybe it makes sense to open it up for Q&A from anybody who's got any questions at this point. I'm going to be able to probably do that, and I'm giving it about another week. I'll be able to run like that.
Yeah, you got to watch out for these things. It's more of an obstacle course. But I figure I would ask, thanks for all the insights. My name is Ryan Fullen. I'm the director at the Entrepreneur Center at UCI. So we work with undergrads. And
Zot.
yeah, any other Zotters in here? Yeah, okay. So a lot of students are passionate about getting involved and giving back, and they're also excited about starting their own nonprofits. And so I'm just curious how you see UCI and other schools that are local to feed into what you're doing, and the partnerships with, or the need for, or opportunities for students, because they're so busy unless it's either in front of them or they see how this is helping with what they're doing along lines. I'm curious.
So 15 years ago, Illumination Foundation was founded by a couple of MBA students out of the Mirage School of Business at UC Irvine. And the school incubated the organization. So we're a product of UCI. And so recently we were able to get Dean Ian Williamson on our board. And so we presented him with a problem. This is how you use your board's expertise, right? We presented him with a problem about retention, employee retention, all that. He happens to be an expert in HR. So he's teaching a class, and we're his case study. So we have a great relationship with UCI and leveraging the resources there.
But I think that perhaps some of it is making sure that all the students at UCI are aware of what's actually around here in Orange County. And I'm speaking about that firsthand because over the years I've always had interns at the banks that I've built, and UCI I could always see out my window, just looking across the moat, and it seemed that the outreach from UCI and accessibility to students at UCI was completely different than access to students at Chapman and other colleges and universities here in Southern California, and for that matter, even nationally. So I think the communication and exposure and access to what is around here and encouraging them to connect is where the gap is.
And is there a certain connection point that you point them to?
I'll jump in for a second. So our first volunteer, when I didn't have any back in 2007, was actually from UCI. She came to us through the Department of Social Ecology, and she was doing a service learning project. We really, embraced that idea because while they are very busy as college students, there's a possibility within a service learning project, which is a nationwide opportunity at most universities, where you can actually earn credit while spending time on site at a nonprofit of your choice, which gives you the opportunity to finish the class that you have to do anyway, but you can do it on site and you can earn units. That's a program that's active at UCI and is at Chapman and others as well. I think that's a great hybrid solution to bring the students into the industry, but also allow them to meet their goals as well.
Interesting. Well, I'm happy to be a gateway to those that are more entrepreneurial minded as well, because some of them are passionate about starting their own nonprofits. So maybe that could be another channel for those enterprising students.
You know, I would just, this is not going to be popular, especially sitting next to Autumn, but there are a lot of nonprofits that already exist. And there's a lot of duplication that ends up making the nonprofit industry inefficient. You don't hear about nonprofits merging like you do in private industry, but there's a lot of little nonprofits that people are passionate. They're doing their best to make it work, but they might have more of an impact joining an organization that's already established, that they can bring their ideas, their passion, their resources to help further their mission and have a bigger impact than struggling with all the governance and setting up a nonprofit and doing all those things. So there's ways to have an impact without having to go down that path, and I think still have as much impact.
But I do think that there are internships available and volunteer opportunities for students to be able to come and experience a nonprofit and learn from, professionals in the nonprofit sector. We work with UCI, we work with Chapman, we work with USC, social work, school, Long Beach. So I would just encourage students to be tenacious and pick up the phone and contact, a local nonprofit.
Yeah, we
They
have
are,
a
but they'll
robust
probably text.
internship
Text
program
us,
too.
yeah.
Text is good.
Look, let me just throw one more thing out there, as long as we're going to be unpopular. I think there's, and I've been saying this for years, so my team has heard me say this here and at Opus, that Orange County is broken, I think, when it comes to this whole internship concept. We don't have enough of the private sector stepping up and saying, I want to take on interns, and reaching out and letting everyone know that internship opportunities are here. We don't have enough of the students thinking that Orange County is somewhere where they can have great career success. They feel like they have to go somewhere else in the country in order to have that success. And I think whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, people need to step up and raise their hands and say, I'll take on 10, or I'll take on 1. And create that opportunity. I would say that some of my most rewarding, fulfilling, soulful experiences have been when a foster kid comes from Orangewood, from Samuel Academy, shows up on day 1 for their internship at whether it was Commercial Capital, Opus, or here, and they show up feeling very insecure, very uncertain around a lot of adults, and they haven't found their voice yet. And all of a sudden they're thrust into the boardroom on day 1, and they have to introduce themselves to all the executive and senior management team, while the executive and senior management team is going around the table talking about what they got going on that week. And then from there, as a couple of weeks go on, and that intern is having the greater amount of opportunity to speak up, to immerse, to learn skills, to see that they can actually succeed in a work environment, all of a sudden somewhere along the way they find their voice. And then that person becomes a real adult in the room who is having an impact, making a difference, and seeing that they can have a career path and that they can hang with adults. And it started out day 1 where the only thing they were comfortable looking at was maybe their phone. And then all of a sudden they're realizing eye contact matters, speaking up matters, and they're hanging. And by the end of the summer, we're wondering how come they have to leave.
I wish that there were more companies and organizations that would invest in volunteer management, infrastructure, that was something that you could write a grant for, and that it's a very fundable type of opportunity from a corporate perspective or a foundation perspective. Because if I had somebody on my team who could truly manage the volunteers coming through, we would be able to give incredible opportunities to people in the community. So that's one thing. 2 is when I was with Ronald McDonald House Charities, we created a seat on our board that was a young professional. We we were the first to do it in the country. We called it the Red Shoe Society, and the president of the Red Shoe Society was a member of our board, and that gave young professionals starting in their career an opportunity to see what sitting on a board looked like. And then they could take those leadership skills and they used them on the Red Shoe Society board, which was a board of young professionals supporting, Ronald McDonald House Charities.
Deb, the real magic is how much we as a board, we old people, can learn from
Totally.
that youth.
I think that the best things that I've learned come from the most unlikely sources. I want to encourage my team all the time to speak up, my board members to speak up. I want to be listening, constantly listening, because the best ideas come from the most unlikely sources.
Yes, I have a question. This is the first group of philanthropic organizations where I've heard actual business acumen spoken. So I used to be, many years ago, like 35 years ago, the chairman of a board of directors for a major charitable organization. And one of the biggest challenges we had was, how do we get funding in a crazy world, with markets going up and down, donors disappearing, all of that. And we instituted an endowment program. We got a grant, and we raised hundreds of millions of dollars in the endowment program. So I'm just curious if you guys are working on that down here in Orange County.
Endowments? Is that what the question
Yes.
is about, endowments? When I was with, again, Ronald McDonald House, I'll use that as an example, we did have a reserve replacement account and an endowment account, and at the time, this was back in like 2003. I don't know that board members felt comfortable that we were raising revenue in excess of expenses and we were putting that money aside. Come 2007, 2008, boy, they were grateful that, we had those reserves in place.
And for those people who don't know what an endowment is, it's a large amount of money in an investment account, and then the income is available to fund the annual expenses of a charity. Anyway, I'm excited about what you're doing. I appreciate what you're all doing, and I guess I'll give Stephen a call and talk about the endowments and see where that takes us. All right, thanks.
Thank you for joining us.
Hello, my name is Julie Hudash, and I'm the founder and CEO of Team Kids. And one quick statement following Ryan Folan. Our staff is mostly made up of UCI interns and a university model we've replicated with other universities. So much of our employees have all been previous university interns, so it really is an amazing resource. But my question really has to do with entrepreneurship, and as a CEO of a nonprofit, I'm with you. We have no shortage of challenges with the economy, with COVID, with so many of the things in this divisive world. But from where you sit, what do you see that is inspiring or innovative on the horizon in the nonprofit world coming down the pipeline from where you guys are as we're shifting into, so many challenges, but what is inspiring that you see hopefully coming down the pipeline?
I'll jump in. One of the things that Miracles has been working on is really in the space of CSR, right? Corporate social responsibility, which everybody, or at least a lot of people, know about. The idea that companies, while doing what they're doing in the community, should also be doing things in the community in addition to what they're doing with their businesses. It's an exciting opportunity for nonprofits, as it's a multi-billion-dollar world, this corporate partnership idea, right? Bringing in a nonprofit to discuss employee contribution programs and employee engagement through direct volunteerism and corporate match opportunities. The idea of CSR and the partnerships that can be forged between all of the nonprofits in the private sector, I think have a great opportunity to really help us as we experience the waves, right? We're not going it alone. We've got partners who have revenue resources who continue to help, and in return, bringing in that social good into a private sector entity. It also helps with employee retention, so there's a wonderful, yin and yang that goes there. I think it's a great opportunity for both sides really moving forward, especially as the economy goes into, what we have facing throughout the Q3 and Q4.
There are a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot of opportunity, right? We're coming out of a pandemic into somewhat of a new world. There's a lot of money coming down in education. There's a lot of money coming down around, you can't go anywhere without somebody talking about homelessness, at least in my sector. And there are resources available, but the key is, are you able to take advantage of those resources? Are you set up to take advantage of those resources? There's a Medi-Cal reform called CalAIMS, which we are one of the, we're very poised to take advantage of the programs that come around with that. So some of the things we're thinking about, I saw Bill Bracken here earlier, he's in the food side. There's health plans can now pay for things like medically tailored meals, right? So that can turn into a social enterprise very easily. So looking at those opportunities, looking at those funding streams, and seeing what innovation can happen, and those are the exciting things that's happening, at least in my sector.
Yeah, I would. This time I would agree with Jay. There is a tremendous amount of fiscal resources that are being devoted to certain issues such as homelessness, and one of the things I would suggest is don't try to do it yourself. We believe in the network nonprofit model at Orangewood. We've collaborated with, most recently, we got a grant from the state. They only issued 8 grants, 1 per county. And because our proposal brought in Covenant House to do the shelter piece and United Way to do the apartment finding and us to do the case management, our proposal was compelling, and we got that $2.2 million over the next 5 years to help house more of our youth. So sometimes you see a problem and you figure out, geez, how am I going to tackle this? I've only got so many volunteers or staff members. But there's others that have clients that have the same issue, and by pooling your resources together, it also brings more brain power and innovation and thought process into trying to come up with some creative solutions.
And for us, it's the science. In the space that we're in, the fact that we had 2 drugs over the past 18 months, the first 2 drugs ever that have been approved to slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease, and there are more in the pipeline right now. So we've been in existence for 40 years, and the fact that we now have 2 drugs that are in the pipeline, we need to be thinking about innovative ways to make sure that patients all across the world have access to those drugs.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maggie Moreno. I'm here from the Office of Congressman Correa. So thank you so much for all the information that you provided. I guess this is a little bit of a plug for the federal government. We provide a lot of governments. We got a lot of federal funding coming in. And so I think that it's a great opportunity for you guys to talk about how you can work with us, how you can work with the city. Since the money is coming down from the federal government down to the state and the local agencies, it's really important to let the nonprofits know how it is to work to get some of that funding. And it would be nice to see how it is that we can all, once again, as you say, network and partner and kind of share the ideas on how to be more innovative to reach some of that funding. And another thing that I'd like to see, if you could let us know how it is that you can bring these opportunities into the communities where the people know the area, the people know the issues, and the communities are able to get involved a little bit more with the organizations and nonprofits, and have a different light come into the way that things are done once the funding is in the cities, is in the communities that we serve. So it would be nice to know, if I can hear from you, how it is that we can better connect to our communities and how we can better connect to our cities and getting that funding down to the nonprofits.
You all have a relationship with Lou Correa's office? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's really important to partner with our elected officials as well, because and they hear from a lot of different people, but it helps to share information. So things like, and going back to what's exciting, there's changes in, depending on where you stand in terms of the position on this, but there's legislation that's going to make it easier for us to build ADUs, right? So it's for those of us who are trying to get more housing, that's an important strategy. There's legislation that's going to make it easier for you to build housing in religious organizations and properties that are underutilized. And of course, the congressman also recently has a grant opportunity out that we did apply for. So just to make sure you knew.
Yes. And
Harmless
it's good
plug.
to know the language.
Recently, what date was it filed?
Last week.
Last week.
Community
So it was
project
just
funding.
filed last week with your office, and it needs to move towards the front of the table.
Yes, please.
Sorry. Thank you.
I think any time that you can involve nonprofit leaders in the discussions early on, and I think there's been a lot of progress made in this area, especially with the County of Orange. Years ago, an RFP would come out for a contract, and we would read it and say, this isn't what the youth need, or this isn't the best way to approach this. Whereas now, there seems to be more listening sessions and planning sessions, and we have a seat at the table in crafting that RFP, knowing our populations that we serve as well as we do. I think it's an untapped resource of expertise that the local and state government needs to tap into. I mean, we've got such a long history of working with specific populations or tackling specific issues that we have a lot that we could offer up. And that does seem to be, that tide is turning a little bit, and it's improved.
Thank you for that. Yes, thank you.
I want to thank you for coming. I'm fairly new to the nonprofit world. My sister started a nonprofit, Uniforms for Hope, 3.5 years ago, and I told her, just do it and I'll help you, never realizing how much work it takes. So,
I'm sure you're getting a great salary though, right?
oh yeah, I work overtime and
Priceless.
the benefits are just wonderful. I'm a chiropractor. I could adjust 1,000 people for the work that I'm doing. But anyways, my question is, we provide school uniforms for children overseas because we realized kids weren't going to school. Like a uniform is more than just a piece of clothing. Like children in Kenya, Cambodia, Tanzania, it's mandatory for a school uniform. So that's how it started when we were visiting schools and orphanages around the world. We realized that there are over 200 million kids around the world not going to school, so that's what compelled us to start that. So we're in 9 countries, and then we wanted to do something locally, and we realized right here, like in San Juan Capistrano, Anaheim, and Santa Ana, the lower income schools actually wear uniforms. So we started in San Juan. There's 1,000 kids in Anaheim that need uniforms. So my question is, like, you can buy it at Target or Walmart. Like, how do you connect? We're just like a small nonprofit. How do you connect with these bigger companies to like donate uniforms and things like that, like they did with the toys and all that? So I'm just looking for answers on how to try and connect with on a higher level to get more kids to school.
Having been in the corporate side of philanthropy, I would say it's just reaching out. I mean, go to your local Target and talk to the manager, and the first thing you have to do is engage someone, right? And through that engagement, through their passion, and get them passionate about your cause, and if there's a connection there, then they will help you get into the company, usually.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd all agree with that. You know, I think there's also opportunities in most companies. There's somebody designated to bridge, you know, to the community. If you have a specific target and you've done some research and you know they support in that space, finding them and reaching out to Jack's Point is probably a great opportunity for you to share your cause as well.
I also think about like the clothing manufacturers, that would be another resource as well.
Yeah, like overseas, we have the women in the village make the uniforms to promote the economy, so that's how we do it overseas. But here, it's like you could just buy a shirt and shorts or that kind of thing. So I was just trying to, you know, work locally to make a difference here. So, but thanks. I'll go around to Target and Walmart and pound the pavement.
We've all done it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Huang, and I am with Moving Forward Psychological Institute. I'm also a board member for the Alzheimer Association. Get support Debbie, also know Jack, so support you guys. First of all, I appreciate everything that you have shared working as a nonprofit. I have founded a nonprofit called Via Care for 16 years. About a few years ago, I decided to step down and focus on my for-profit, which is Moving Forward. And part of my frustration within the infrastructure of nonprofit is the board structure. And then, because when decision needs to be made and action needs to be taken, I don't have time to wait for everybody to come together. So that's why I love the for-profit sector where, like as Stephen said, hey, I believe in this, let's make it happen. And that was my experience during COVID, where I was a former full-time employee at the county overseeing crisis program. I saw the crisis, and as a mental health professional in crisis management response, I knew how it would impact my community. I pleaded the county, I pitched my ideas to support the community. At the pace that the county progressed, as we all know, with big corporation or government, it's very slow. Within the nonprofit sector, when I reached out, it was also a challenge. And then when I took a leap of faith, I quit my job and focused on this. I was able to reach out to Tam, right, on the board as well, and we built a coalition with Nailing It for America. We built a Moving Forward Together coalition of all volunteer, a private and public partnership. And I think what I hear from today, from everybody here, is the importance of collaboration and partnership. And I don't think it's the responsibility of just a nonprofit to address the needs in the community. I believe all the companies, everyone that lives in this community has a social responsibility to come together to collaborate. And it is through events such as this that you invite and have people come together. I think this is invaluable. I wonder if we can have this in the heart of different communities where they are harder to reach. The harder to reach the underserved, the unserved community, where they may not have the luxury to take days off or time off to attend. If we were to have this type of the event in the evening or the weekend, so that the community members can come and learn about it. They can learn about the entrepreneurship, volunteer opportunity, internship opportunity. So as a call to action, maybe to have events also in the evening and on the weekend where the general public can also attend and can benefit. Thank you.
In there, I think you drew one incorrect conclusion, though, and that was that you assumed that nonprofits are all bureaucratic, and that because you have a board that you can't get things done. And you can also have a for-profit organization that has a dysfunctional board and not get anything done. So I think it's about breaking through barriers. You know, if something makes sense to do, pushing to get it done. You can always call a special meeting and not wait for that meeting, a month from now or 2 months from now, if something is critically important enough, and break through the nonsense that goes with the bureaucracy on either side.
And connected to that, and going back to what Chris said about maybe too many nonprofits, and duplicate. There's nothing wrong with having a for-profit with purpose and mission, right? Genesis Bank, right? And what is Stephen stated the purpose and the mission of this bank. And so, we spun off some organizations ourselves that are for profit, but it's more of a social benefits type of organization, right? So it's not a 501c3, but it allows us to generate income, but at the same time, the mission isn't to generate income. The mission is to provide housing.
Yeah, I think Autumn brought up CSR earlier. Companies can have a big impact by having a robust CSR program, by inspiring their team members to get more involved in supporting nonprofits and their missions. The biggest challenge is the company dedicating resources to that CSR effort and really having a champion within the company that's going to proactively lead those efforts. There's good intention a lot of times, but if they're asking this person to do something kind of on the side, on top of their regular job, it doesn't really get the traction that probably the owner would like or the staff would like. So like Jack said, for-profit companies can really impact the nonprofit community dramatically. If one program can inspire 100 or 200 or 300 employees to want to do more for whatever they're passionate about, that just benefits the community at large.
But it's got to start all the way at the top, and then it permeates through the whole organization. You can't just, it goes back to what Emil did in Irvine. You can't just have it be an ad hoc kind of effort on the side, and that'll wear down and fall apart eventually. And if it starts all the way up at the board level and goes through executive team, senior management, all the way through where everybody embraces it and owns it, then it perpetuates. And I just happen to be in an industry where I can say there's 4,900 other banks, and if someone doesn't believe in our mission, go work at one of the other 4,900, not us.
I've worked, when I was a news anchor for CBS, I lived in different parts of the country. I've seen different parts of the country, and there is nothing like Orange County and the business community here. I do want to applaud you, Stephen, for putting something like this together, but there are lots of companies in this community who are doing good. It is something to be proud of.
Can I steal one last question?
And I didn't pay for that.
So,
thank you.
I know we're pressed for time. So
Emil, you're the best.
Just want to steal one last question. So Emil Aaron, City of Irvine DEI Committee. I also chair the city's Irvine Recovery Plan. And one of the consistent threads that I've noticed, even in listening to each of you talk, most of you are from established nonprofits. What advice do you have for the emerging nonprofits who typically, from what we've seen, struggle with kind of capacity building and a lot of the key back end functions that are essential to really make that impact that you're looking for? So what advice would you have for some of the emerging nonprofits?
I'm going to say mentorship. They're incredible nonprofit leaders in this community and in communities across the country. I was fortunate enough when I switched my career from the television space to the nonprofit space, I blew a lot of things up because I didn't know what I was doing, and I needed to find, the right mentor where I could bounce ideas off of them, where it was a safe space, where I could learn quickly about the budgeting process and how to raise funds. And I think that that's really important to mentor folks in the community. I'm an executive coach. I do it for free, pro bono, and I know that there are lots of community leaders who do that as well. So I feel very strongly about coaching folks.
Yeah, I think our Orange County nonprofit community, all of us embrace collaboration with one another, supporting one another, trying to solve problems together and mentoring others that are coming up through the space. And I probably have phone calls one a week with someone saying, hey, I've got a friend who's doing this. Can you just talk to him? And maybe it's something we can collaborate on together. So yeah, just have them reach out. We're not scary. set the time aside to see what their challenges are. If we can't help them, we're all pretty well connected and know who in the community is an expert in that and refer them over, and everybody's really good about supporting one another.
I'd love to take you up on that, all of you.
There's also Katie. Katie, where are you?
She's in the way back. I see her in the
She's
red
on the
coat.
There's an organization. Katie, who's the organization here in Orange County who incubates nonprofits, handles all their charitable ventures, where they also handle they walk you through the accounting, they keep your books and records, they mentor you, they kind of help you grow up before they launch you out into the community on your own.
Yeah, Fieldstone Foundation is another one for emerging leaders. They have a program.
And 1OC can also add, if somebody's looking for a fiscal sponsor, doesn't want to take in the CFO and finance and budget work internally or can't afford it, you can do a fiscal sponsorship as well and have an expert partner with you. And there are those types of resources as well that are really useful, and they can keep you efficient in your early days.
And not every one of those organizations makes it. They may have a great idea and maybe the wrong leader, and it doesn't gain any traction, and eventually it folds. But that's like any entrepreneurial startup kind of concept.
So in 1999, I started a nonprofit, and I said, I don't want to run a nonprofit. So I reached out to an organization that was already established. I said, hey, I got this program that I want to run. You incubate me, you do all your nonprofit stuff, and I'll just run the program. And I did that for years, right? And you don't have to have your own 501c3. There are ways around it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. So we have a gift for each one of you. I just don't want to give the one with the wrong name to the wrong person. So Jack, I need my glasses again. All right, so Jack Twan, Illumination Foundation, is now a member of the Business Leadership Circle at the Genesis Bank Institute for Entrepreneurship. Thank you. And Deb, same language but with your name. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Autumn, thank you.
Thank you.
And Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen.
We really appreciate everyone coming out today. I think it was great. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope someone had something that they take away from it that inspired them and moved them and has them want to be a part of impacting community just as all of us do. And again, thank you for joining us.